And there I was. I was the girl from Suits.
This one's wife. Why do people comment on her? The normal. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Continuing with the series, which helps you understand why content creators are motivated to create material commenting regularly on this one's wife. There are those content creators that create videos, create blog articles, create journalistic pieces, which are done for talking about various aspects of this one's wife. Furthermore, many people comment. But I'm examining what it is that drives those content creators to take these steps to provide regular material about this one's wife. Not only does this help you understand the motivations of those individuals, but it will help you understand more about the general behaviours of the foundation classifications that I use in relation to my work, namely dividing people up into empaths, normals, narcissistic people, but they're not narcissists, and narcissists. In this video, I'm going to examine why it is that normals are motivated to comment to the extent that they do about this one's wife. Normals are the largest group of the four classifications. Normals make up the bulk of individuals on this planet. There are often normals who might, honestly but mistakenly, believe themselves to be empaths. It can also be the case that certain normals might think that they're more narcissistic than they actually are. What are some of the hallmarks of the normal? Well, in the context of the narcissist universe, the normal is somebody who does have emotional empathy, and they have a lot of it, but only for a smallish group of individuals within what I call the circle of empathy. Accordingly, the normal will have a lot of emotional empathy for their children, for their parents, for their siblings, for other family members, for friends, potentially neighbours and colleagues also. This extensive emotional empathy is on a par of that of an empath, whereby they are guided by their emotional empathy and empathic traits in their treatment of these people, caring for them, respecting them, wanting to help them, looking out for them, looking after them, cooperating with them, and so forth. Normals have both empathic and narcissistic traits. Sometimes the normal will lean more towards being empathic as a whole, sometimes leaning more towards being narcissistic. The traits don't tend to be as strong as you would find in an empath, nor as in a narcissistic or narcissist individual. Nevertheless, those traits are there. And those traits, alongside emotional empathy, can ebb and flow dependent upon circumstance. Accordingly, a normal can have reduced emotional empathy for an individual as a consequence of an external stressor. Normals can manipulate people, but they are not inherently or instinctively manipulative, and when they do manipulate somebody, they realize that they are doing it. For those outside of the circle of empathy, the normal doesn't have large amounts of emotional empathy for them. They may either have none or limited. This is why many trolls actually come from the normal group, because they're dealing with somebody that they don't know. Yes, there are plenty of trolls that are narcissistic or narcissists, but given the size of the normal group, they actually contribute to a lot of internet trolls, because quite simply the individual doesn't know the person that they're corresponding with, and therefore they don't have any emotional empathy for them, and they can in essence be unpleasant and mean to them. It's often said that people who behave that way wouldn't behave that way if they were face-to-face with that individual, which is correct, which is part cowardice, but also that in an interaction between the two of them, they would have more emotional empathy for somebody in front of them compared to a complete stranger on the internet. Normals aren't afflicted by the addiction that empaths have to narcissists either. So those are some of the key hallmarks of the normal. Now let's turn to the question of why the members of the normal group, who are content creators, are so motivated to repeatedly comment and create content in relation to this one's wife. Dealing with the strong factors, the first is camaraderie. The fact that the normal is able to belong to a group, belong to a community, is a strong driver for their participation in the repeated instances of creating content. There is a general delight, a general sense of pride at belonging to that group. So, for instance, there are those members that talk about being part of the Megxit community. There's also a further factor in regard to this camaraderie, which I'll come back to in a moment. The second is feedback. This is a strong motivator because the normal individual enjoys getting the views. It provides them with a sense of satisfaction that people are enjoying their work. The fact that they get the likes on their posts or their videos, the fact that people comment praising them. They enjoy that. Not in a self-absorbed way in that a narcissistic or a narcissist would, but nevertheless, the normal person enjoys praise and will often go looking for it. Being less self-effacing than the empath, the normal wants that approval. It isn't defining for them, but it is important to the normal to receive it, for them to receive recognition for their endeavours and hard work. Thirdly, money is a motivating factor. Of course, this varies dependent upon the individual and personal circumstances of the content creator. For instance, they may have a job already that pays them rather well, and therefore the issue of money generated from content creation is less important. But as a whole, for the normal, money is an important factor that motivates them to create content. Thus, the three strong factors that motivate content creation by the normal are camaraderie, feedback, and money. What about emotional empathy? For those of you who listened to my video about the empath group commenting on this one's wife, you'll know that emotional empathy was a significant and strong factor in the motivations of those that comment. It is the case that as a consequence of reading and viewing a lot about those affected by this one's wife's behaviour, there is a degree of emotional empathy felt by the normal for them, even though they are outside of the circle of empathy, because they don't actually necessarily know, for instance, King Charles or Prince William or the Princess of Wales. However, because they take such an interest in the royal family and do so on a regular basis, it's not quite at a parasocial relationship, but it's one whereby they have a degree of knowledge and feel that they know those individuals, and therefore that cultivates some emotional empathy for them. Accordingly, the sympathy that they feel for those who are the victims of this one's wife's behaviour is a moderate factor as a consequence of a degree of emotional empathy, but it's nowhere near as strong a factor as experienced by the empath. However, what is interesting with the normal is that the camaraderie aspect, which is a strong factor in motivation, fosters emotional empathy with other commentators and viewers. It is invariably the case that certain content creators get to know other content creators and forge a friendship from that, which then means that they come within their circle of emotional empathy. And this then contributes to an us against them mentality, the Megxit community as against, say, the Sugars, or supporters of the royal family against Harry and this one's wife. This generally fosters a sense of loyalty by the normal to this community, and therefore the combination of emotional empathy for other content creators alongside camaraderie in the first place, that they enjoy that sense of belonging, means that there is a combination of emotional empathy and camaraderie which makes a particularly strong motivating factor. So it's safe to say that the sense of belonging to the community, of sharing ideas, of sharing gossip or commenting on the gossip, exchanging tidbits of information, reacting to one another's information, engaging in collaborations, those are particularly strong motivating factors for the normals that comment upon this one's wife. A further factor is the dislike of this one's wife. The normal isn't going to have any emotional empathy for her, whereas the empath might do. They might even feel a little bit guilty about the hammering that this one's wife gets, but the normal does not. The normal, of course, doesn't have an addiction to the narcissist, as mentioned, and therefore that isn't a factor that compels comment. But the fact is that the closer levels of empathic traits and narcissistic traits of the normal foster an inherent dislike, unlike the empath, of this one's wife. They simply don't like the way that she behaves. It's not necessarily linked to a specific empathic or narcissistic trait, but rather they look upon her, have no emotional empathy for her because she's outside of the circle of empathy, and her general behaviour creates dislike. And that's actually a moderate factor for why the normal content creator is moved to comment about this one's wife, because they simply dislike her and the way that she behaves. I'm not talking about hatred. That's a much stronger emotion. There may be some that do hate her, but for the most, it's dislike based upon the way that she behaves. It's also important to recognise that the empathic traits do play some part in the motivation of the normal, similar to that of the empath, but not as strong, nowhere near as strong. So, for instance, there may be a sense of wanting this one's wife to get her comeuppance. There is a sense that she is indecent, and that because she tells lies, they want to get to the truth. Therefore, the normal, who will have empathic traits of justice and decency and truth-seeker, will be motivated to a smaller degree by those traits to want to comment. Accordingly, in terms of the main motivating factors in relation to why a normal comments about this one's wife, the strongest factor is that of camaraderie, the sense of belonging to a community, then followed by the enjoyment of feedback and monetary gain. A moderate factor is the dislike of this one's wife, and weaker factors are emotional empathy for those affected and the empathic traits, for instance, of justice, decency, and truth seeker. And there you are. Do you think there's anything else that affects the normal with regard to driving them to comment on this one's wife? If so, let me know in the comment section. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.